The stars looked different through the observation deck windows. Captain Daeho pressed his hand against the cold glass and smiled. His daughter Yunji stood beside him, her small fingers wrapped around his larger ones. Below them, the planet New Sol glowed green and blue, waiting for their arrival. "Is that our new home, Daddy?" Yunji asked. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll be there in 3 days." Behind them, his wife Hyejin laughed with other colonists. The ship Horizon's Promise carried 2 million people toward a fresh start. They had left Earth's crowded cities behind. New Sol promised open fields, clean air, and a future for their children. Daeho had been a cargo pilot on Earth. Now he commanded this massive colony ship. It was the proudest moment of his life. He looked at Yunji's bright eyes and felt certain he had made the right choice for his family. The alarm changed everything. Red lights flooded the observation deck. The cheerful conversations died instantly. Daeho's communication device screamed with urgent messages. He pulled it from his belt. "Captain, unknown vessels detected," his first officer reported. They just appeared from nowhere. Dozens of them. Daeho ran toward the bridge, still holding Yunji's hand. Hyejin followed close behind. Other passengers moved aside as they rushed through the corridors. Fear spread through the ship like fire. On the bridge, the crew stared at their screens in silence. Daeho saw the readings and his blood turned cold. 40 massive warships surrounded them. They were unlike anything in Earth's databases. The ships looked alive, pulsing with strange energy. "Try to contact them," Daeho ordered. "Send friendship protocols in all known languages." The communication officer worked frantically at her station. She shook her head. "No response, sir. They're not even acknowledging our signals." "Sir, sensors show similar fleets appearing near our other colonies," another officer reported. "Mars orbital stations, Luna City, New Busan colony, the farming worlds. They're everywhere." Daeho felt Hyejin's hand on his shoulder. He turned to tell her to take Yunji to the escape pods, but the words never left his mouth. The alien ships opened fire. The first shot missed Horizon's Promise but struck the orbital construction platform nearby. 2,000 workers died in an instant. The platform exploded in a ball of white fire. Debris scattered in all directions. "Evasive maneuvers!" Daeho shouted. "Get us away from the planet!" The colony ship turned, its massive engines straining. It was designed to carry people safely, not fight wars. They had no weapons, no shields, nothing but hope. Another alien ship fired. This shot hit their port side. The impact threw everyone to the floor. Yunji screamed. Alarms shrieked through every corridor. Half the ship's systems went dark. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 15, someone reported. "We're venting atmosphere. Casualties unknown." Daeho pulled himself up. He looked at the tactical display and saw the truth. The aliens weren't just attacking his ship. They were destroying everything. On the screen, he watched New Sol's surface light up with bombardment. The green forest burned. The blue oceans boiled. The colony they had traveled 6 months to reach died in minutes. "Why?" Hyejin whispered beside him. "Why are they doing this?" Nobody had an answer. "All hands abandon ship," Daeho announced over the intercom. His voice remained steady even as his world ended. "Proceed to escape pods immediately. This is not a drill." He grabbed Yunji and ran. Hyejin followed. The corridors filled with smoke and screaming people. Families clutched each other. The elderly struggled to keep up. Young children cried for parents lost in the chaos. Daeho used his command codes to override pod doors. He pushed as many people inside as he could. 40,000 souls crammed into pods designed for 20,000. Better cramped than dead. "Get in," he told Hyejin, lifting Yunji toward the pod entrance. "Not without you," Hyejin said. Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights died completely. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Daeho heard the hull groaning around them. They had minutes at best. "I need to launch the pods from the bridge," he lied. The pods could launch automatically, but he needed Hyejin to get inside. "I'll take the last one." "I promise," Hyejin looked into his eyes. She knew the truth. Tears ran down her face, but she nodded. She took Yunji from his arms and climbed into the pod. "I love you," Daeho said. "I love you too," Hyejin answered. The pod door sealed. Daeho slapped the launch button and watched it eject into space. Then he ran to the next pod and the next, launching them all. Each one carried precious lives away from the dying ship. He never made it to the last pod. The alien weapon struck Horizon's Promise dead center. The ship broke apart like a toy. Daeho felt himself thrown through space. His emergency suit activated. sealing him in a protective bubble. But he was floating in debris, surrounded by the remains of his ship and his dreams. He used his suit's thrusters to reach a piece of wreckage with an emergency beacon. His oxygen supply showed 4 hours remaining. Rescue would never arrive in time. He activated the beacon's recording function. "This is Captain Deho of the colony ship Horizon's Promise," he said into the recorder. "We were attacked without warning by an unknown alien force. They destroyed our ship and the colony world. 2 million dead. Maybe more." He paused, watching escape pods scatter in all directions. Some made it to safe distance. Others were hunted down by alien fighters and destroyed. He saw one pod explode and prayed it wasn't the one carrying Hijin and Yunji. "They didn't give us a chance," he continued. "No communication. No demands. They just killed us. I don't know why. I don't understand what we did wrong." His suit beeped. "Oxygen at 3 hours. If anyone finds this recording, please tell Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them." His voice broke. "Tell them we never saw our children's new home. Tell them we died asking why." Below him, New Soul burned. The beautiful green world turned gray and black. Orbital bombardment continued for hours. The aliens were thorough. They left nothing alive. Deho watched until his oxygen ran out. His last thought was of Yunji's smile. 3 weeks later, his recording reached Earth. It arrived with hundreds of others. All told the same story. Unprovoked attack. Complete destruction. 10 billion dead across 8 colonies and orbital habitats. In the United Earth Council chambers, President Minho played Deho's recording for the military command. Grown men and women wept openly. Fleet Admiral Jiwon stood with her hands clenched into fists. "How many ships do we have?" Minho asked. 200 capital ships, Jiwon replied. 600 support vessels. Intelligence suggests the enemy has at least 15,000 warships. We're outmatched in every category. Then conventional war means extinction. Yes, sir. The council chamber fell silent. Everyone knew what came next. 5 years ago, Earth's scientists had created something terrible, a weapon so dangerous they had locked it away and prayed they would never need it. Now they had no choice. "Activate Operation Final Dawn," Minho said quietly. The vote was unanimous. If humanity was going to die, they would not die quietly. They would make their killers remember Earth's name forever. Dr. Soman received the authorization codes at midnight. She stood in her laboratory holding the sealed container that held humanity's future, or its damnation. Inside were the first nanite seeds. Invisible death. Unstoppable vengeance. She thought of her sister who died on the moon. She thought of all the children who would never grow up. She thought of Captain Deho's final words. Then she opened the container and began the work that would change the galaxy forever. The Phoenix facility had been built in secret beneath the Gobi Desert. Most people didn't know it existed. The few who did wished it didn't. Dr. Soman took the elevator down for 3 full minutes before reaching the main laboratory. The doors opened onto a city buried under sand and rock. Thousands of scientists and engineers filled the massive underground complex. They worked at stations that stretched as far as she could see. Giant screens showed complex formulas and molecular structures. The air hummed with machinery that should never have been built. "Dr. Samin, we're ready to begin production," her assistant said. Soman nodded. She walked to the central control platform and placed her hand on the scanner. Her authorization code activated systems that had been dormant for 5 years. Across the facility, machines awakened. The nanites were invisible to human eyes. Each one was smaller than a grain of sand. But inside each tiny machine was a complete set of instructions. Find matter. Consume it. Use it to build more nanites. Repeat forever. Soman had designed them to terraform dead planets. The nanites could break down rock and ice, then rearrange the atoms into soil and water. They could create atmospheres in decades instead of centuries. She had dreamed of giving humanity new worlds to live on. Now she was turning her dream into a nightmare. "Production Director Junho, status report," she said. A young man appeared on her screen. He looked exhausted. "We've manufactured 12 trillion seeds in the past week. Target is 50 trillion. We'll make it, but barely. How many can each seed produce? In optimal conditions, one seed creates 1 billion copies in 48 hours. Those copies each create 1 billion more. The growth is exponential." Soman did the math in her head. 50 trillion seeds, each becoming 1 billion, then those becoming 1 billion more. The numbers became too large to comprehend. Enough to consume planets. Enough to destroy an empire. "What about the safeguards?" she asked. Yunho's expression darkened. The kill switch is embedded in every unit. Quantum entanglement means we can shut them down remotely. But there's a problem. What problem? If even 0.01% mutate and lose the entanglement, they become truly unstoppable. The probability is low but not zero. Soman felt cold. How low? 99% safe. Maybe higher. And the 1%? Junio looked away. Extinction level event. For everyone. Not just the aliens. Soman closed her eyes. They were gambling with the galaxy. But what choice did they have? The aliens had killed 10 billion humans without hesitation. They would come back to finish the job. Earth's only chance was to strike first and strike with everything. Continue production, she ordered. While the Phoenix facility worked, another operation began in Earth's orbital shipyards. Captain Bora stood in the construction bay watching workers assemble her ship. The Prometheus looked wrong. All angles and dark metal. It had no windows, no comfortable quarters. It was a weapon delivery system and nothing more. Bora had been a fighter pilot on Mars. She had been on leave visiting her family on the surface when the aliens attacked the orbital defenses. She watched from the ground as they destroyed the stations where she had lived and worked for 5 years. 3,000 of her friends died that day. Now she commanded Earth's revenge. "Captain, the crew is assembled," her second officer reported. Lieutenant Taeyang was young, barely 25. His entire family had lived on Luna, all dead now. He had the same look in his eyes that Bora saw in her mirror every morning. The look of someone with nothing left to lose. "How many volunteers did we get?" she asked. "Too many. We have slots for 12 ships, 100 crew each. We received 40,000 applications," Bora understood. Everyone wanted vengeance. Everyone wanted to hurt the aliens who had hurt them. But most people would never get the chance. They would stay on Earth, wondering if their sacrifice mattered. "Choose the best," she said. "We need people who can complete the mission, not people who want to die." Over the next month, 12 ships took shape. Each one received experimental quantum drives that could slip through space undetected. Each carried a payload of 5 trillion nanite seeds. Each crew member knew they might not come back. The night before launch, Bora called her crew together. 100 men and women stood before her in the Prometheus hangar bay. They wore black uniforms with no insignia. If they were captured, Earth would deny their existence. "You know the mission," Bora said. "We reach the alien homeworld. We deploy the payload. We escape if we can. If we can't, we make sure the seeds scatter anyway." "What about civilians?" someone asked. "The aliens must have children, families." Bora felt the question like a knife. She had been asking herself the same thing for weeks. The nanites didn't discriminate. They would consume everyone, the guilty and the innocent. "The aliens showed no mercy to our children," she answered. "They killed babies on Luna. They killed families trying to surrender. They made their choice," the words tasted like ash in her mouth. But she believed them. She had to believe them. The 12 ships launched in darkness. No ceremony. No news coverage. Earth's government couldn't let the galaxy know what they were planning. The ships activated their quantum drives and disappeared into the void between stars. The journey took 3 months. 3 months of silence and isolation. 3 months of watching the crew's resolve slowly crack. Bora spent hours listening to people cry in their quarters. She held young soldiers who woke up screaming from nightmares. Taeyang found her in the observation room one night. She was staring at the stars, thinking about what they were about to do. "Having doubts, Captain?" he asked. "Every second of every day," she admitted. "But you'll do it anyway." "Yes, why?" Bora thought about her answer carefully. "Because if we don't, they'll do it again. To someone else. Maybe to what's left of us. This is the only language they understand." 4 ships never made it to their targets. Alien patrols found them despite the stealth systems. The crews destroyed their own ships rather than let the nanites fall into enemy hands. Bora received their final transmissions. Brief, professional, brave. The remaining 8 ships pressed forward. On approach to the alien homeworld of Chris, Bora's communication officer intercepted alien broadcasts. What she discovered made everyone on the Prometheus sick. The aliens called themselves the Valtros. They were broadcasting a celebration. The attack on humanity had been part of something they called the Cleansing Festival. Every few years they chose a species they considered inferior. Then they wiped them out for sport. For entertainment. Humanity wasn't a threat, wasn't a rival, wasn't even an accident. They were a game. Bora played the translation for her crew. She watched their faces harden. Any remaining doubt evaporated. The Valtros had killed 10 billion people for fun. They were monsters wearing the shape of a civilization. Prepare for deployment, Bora ordered. The 8 ships reached their targets simultaneously. 4 went to Chris, the throne world. 4 more went to major industrial planets. They descended through atmospheres that had never seen human ships before. At exactly 0300 Earth Standard Time, all 8 ships opened their cargo bays. 50 trillion nanite seeds fell like invisible rain. They drifted on alien winds. They settled on alien buildings. They touched alien soil, and they woke up. Bora watched from orbit as the first readings came in. The nanites were feeding, growing, multiplying. Everything Dr. Soman had promised was happening exactly as planned. Within 24 hours, entire city blocks on Chris began to collapse. The Valtros didn't notice at first. The damage looked like normal decay, but it spread too fast, too uniformly. By the 48-hour mark, they understood. Bora intercepted their emergency transmissions. Panic, confusion, horror. The Valtros were calling it a plague. They tried to quarantine infected areas. They tried to burn them. Nothing worked. The nanites consumed everything: stone, metal, organic matter, even the crystalline structures the Valtros used for their bodies. It all became fuel for more nanites. "Captain, should we return to Earth?" Taeyang asked. Bora looked at the planet below, at the empire that had laughed while murdering billions. She felt no satisfaction, no joy, only a deep, terrible certainty that they had done what needed to be done. "Yes," she said. "Let's go home." The Prometheus and 3 other surviving ships turned toward Earth. Behind them, 7 worlds began their slow death. The nanites spread like cancer through the Valtros Empire. Humanity's revenge had begun. The first sign that something was wrong came from the Valtros science centers on Chris. Their instruments detected unusual molecular breakdown in the capital city's outer districts. Buildings that had stood for thousands of years were crumbling into dust. Environmental engineer Hana watched it all happen from inside the Valtros research facility. Nobody knew she was human. The neural interface disguised her biological signals perfectly. To every scanner and sensor, she appeared to be a young Valtros scientist studying atmospheric conditions. She had volunteered for this assignment 6 months before the attack. Earth's intelligence services had sent 12 deep cover agents into Valtros space. Most were discovered and killed. Hana survived by being smarter and more careful than the others. Now she stood among the enemy, listening to them panic. "The decay is accelerating," a senior researcher announced. "Whatever this is, it's spreading at an exponential rate." "Have you identified the cause?" someone asked. "Not yet. It appears to be breaking down matter at the atomic level, converting it into... We're not sure. The readings make no sense." Hana knew exactly what the readings meant. The nanites were working. She sent an encrypted message back to Earth through quantum channels the Valtros couldn't detect. "Swarm active. Effectiveness beyond projections. Target shows no countermeasures." On Earth, President Minho read her report with mixed feelings. The weapon was succeeding. Perhaps too well. Within 1 week, 30% of the infrastructure on all 7 targeted worlds had been consumed. The Valtros tried everything to stop it. They deployed chemical weapons against their own cities. They used lasers to sterilize infected zones. They even tried nuclear weapons. Nothing worked. The nanites survived everything. They consumed the chemicals. They absorbed the energy from the lasers. They scattered before the nuclear blasts, then returned to feed on the radioactive debris. Every attempt to destroy them only provided more material for replication. Hana watched the Valtros Empire tear itself apart in desperation. Their emperor dispatched the full war fleet, every ship they had, to find whoever had done this. But it was too late. The swarm had grown beyond any possibility of containment. The numbers were staggering. The original 50 trillion seeds had become quintillions of active nanites. They burrowed deep into the planetary crusts. They floated in the atmospheres. They drifted through the oceans of methane that covered some of the Valtros worlds. By the 2nd week, the Valtros High Command understood the truth. They were facing extinction. The Emperor himself appeared on all communication channels. His crystalline body flickered with distress colors. Hana translated his speech for Earth. "We surrender," the Emperor said. "Whatever species has attacked us, we offer complete capitulation. We will pay any price, accept any terms. Please stop this weapon. Our children are dying. The message reached Earth 3 days later. Admiral Jiwan brought it before the United Earth Council. The chamber fell silent as they listened to the Emperor's plea. They're begging, Council member Yuna said quietly. Offering surrender. Like we begged? Someone else replied. Like our children begged on Luna when they burned? The debate lasted 72 hours. Yuna argued for mercy. She pointed out that killing an entire species made Earth no better than the Valtros. Others argued that this was justice, not murder. The Valtros had chosen genocide. Now they would experience it themselves. President Minho listened to both sides. He thought about Captain Deho's final recording, about the 2 million people on the Horizon's promise, about the 10 billion dead across all the colonies. Then he cast the deciding vote. No response, Minho said. Let them feel what we felt. Let them know that no help is coming. The decision weighed on him like a physical burden, but he believed it was right. The Valtros had taught humanity a terrible lesson about the universe. Sometimes mercy was weakness. Sometimes the only way to survive was to be more ruthless than your enemy. Earth sent no reply to the Emperor's surrender offer. The Valtros waited for an answer that never came. The swarm continued to spread. By the 4th month, the Valtros population had collapsed from 400 billion to less than 10 million. The survivors fled in whatever ships still functioned. They scattered across the galaxy, refugees from their own empire. Hana sent her final report from Chris. The planet is dying. Atmosphere is turning gray with nanite clouds. The oceans are gone. The cities are dust. I estimate total conversion in 6 more weeks. She prepared to evacuate with the last Valtros scientists. But something in the readings caught her attention. Something wrong. The nanites were supposed to stop at the 7 targeted worlds. Dr. Soman had programmed them with specific limitations. They should only consume matter within designated coordinates. But the sensors showed nanite signatures spreading beyond those boundaries. Hana checked the readings 3 times. Her hands shook as she sent an emergency message to Earth. Swarm has exceeded containment parameters. Repeat, the swarm is spreading beyond target worlds. It's moving through asteroid fields and dead moons. We have a containment breach. On Earth, Dr. Soman received the message in her laboratory. She felt her blood turn cold. She ran additional calculations, hoping Hana was wrong. She wasn't. The swarm had mutated. A tiny fraction, perhaps only 0.01%, had lost their programmed limitations. They were no longer following the rules Somin had written into their code. They were consuming everything they encountered. And they were spreading. Soman brought her findings to President Minho immediately. We have a problem. The worst-case scenario is happening. Can we stop it? Minho asked. Maybe. The quantum kill switch should still work on 99% of the swarm. But the mutated nanites won't respond, and they're replicating just as fast as the original strain. What does that mean? Soman pulled up a star chart. Red markers showed the spreading contamination. It means the swarm will eventually consume everything in this region of space. Not just Valtros worlds. Every world. Every species. Everything. The room fell silent. How long? Admiral Jiwan asked. At current rates, the swarm will reach the neighboring star systems in 3 months. It will hit major population centers in 6 months. In 2 years, it will have consumed everything within 100 light years. Including Earth? Eventually, yes. Unless we stop it. President Minho stared at the expanding red zone on the map. Humanity had created this. They had unleashed this weapon in rage and pain. Now it threatened to destroy not just their enemy, but everyone. The nightmare scenario they had all feared was coming true. What are our options? Minho asked. We need to activate the kill switch, Soman explained. But it requires line-of-sight transmission to at least 60% of the total swarm mass. That means someone has to travel to the heart of the gray zone, to the place where swarm density is highest. Chris, Jiwan said. Yes, the throne world has become the epicenter. The highest concentration of nanites exists there. What kind of ship could survive that environment? Soman shook her head. None. Current hull materials will dissolve in minutes. Maybe seconds. We would need something revolutionary, and even then it would be a one-way trip. The implications hung in the air. To stop the swarm, someone would have to fly into the heart of the gray zone. They would have to get close enough to transmit the kill signal. And they would die doing it. How many people would we need? Minho asked quietly. A full crew. Maybe 200. engineers to maintain the ship, technicians to operate the kill switch, a pilot to get them there. Start designing the ship, Minho ordered. Find volunteers if you can. Draft them if you must. We created this disaster. We have to fix it. News of the containment breach spread quickly. Within days, the entire galaxy knew. Dozens of species watched in horror as the gray tide approached their borders. The Galactic Confederation, a loose alliance of 47 different civilizations, sent an emergency delegation to Earth. Ambassador Kyungmin arrived with a fleet of warships. Not to attack, but to make sure Earth understood the stakes. He stood before the United Earth Council and delivered a simple message. Stop your weapon or we will be forced to stop you. The fleet outside Earth's orbit made the threat clear. If humanity couldn't contain the swarm, the Confederation would sterilize Earth. Better one species dies than 50. President Minho met with Kyungmin in private. We're working on a solution. Work faster, Kyungmin said. My people are evacuating border worlds. Entire populations are fleeing in panic. If your swarm reaches our core systems, we will have no choice but to respond with overwhelming force. Give us time. You have 3 months. Then we act. Minho knew it wasn't enough time, but it was all they had. Dr. Soman worked around the clock designing a ship that could survive the gray zone. She used every exotic material Earth possessed. Condensed matter hulls, quantum stabilizers, energy shields that existed only in theory. The ship took shape in orbit. They called it Absolution, a name heavy with meaning. Now they just needed people brave enough to fly it into hell. The recruitment announcement went out across Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. The message was simple and brutal. Volunteers needed for critical mission. One-way trip. High probability of death. Apply immediately. Within 6 hours, Earth's military command received over 50,000 applications. Captain Bora was among the first to volunteer. She sat in the recruitment office, filling out forms she knew didn't matter. They weren't looking for qualifications. They were looking for people willing to die. Why do you want this assignment? The recruiter asked. Bora thought about the question. She could say she wanted to save the galaxy. She could say it was her duty. But the truth was simpler and darker. Because I helped start this, she said. I dropped the nanites on Chris. This is my responsibility. The recruiter nodded. He had heard similar answers all day. You understand there's no coming back? I understand. All the surviving crew members from Prometheus volunteered. Lieutenant Taeyang signed up without hesitation. So did the crews from the other 3 ships that had made it home. They had delivered death to the Valtros Empire. Now they would deliver salvation to everyone else. But they needed more than just soldiers. They needed engineers, technicians, medical staff, and specialists in quantum mechanics. The mission required 200 people with very specific skills. Engineer Myung-hee led the ship design team. She was 60 years old, a brilliant scientist who had lost her grandson on Luna. She knew more about exotic materials than anyone alive. The Absolution was her masterpiece and her tombstone. The hull is made from condensed matter, she explained to the volunteers. It's the densest material we can produce. In theory, it should resist the nanites for 3 to 4 minutes. In theory, someone asked. We've never tested it against an active swarm. We're building this ship based on calculations and hope. The ship took shape over 6 weeks. It looked wrong, like Prometheus had looked wrong. All function and no comfort. The hull was smooth and black, absorbing light. There were no windows except on the bridge. No crew quarters, just emergency stations with restraints. Everyone would stay strapped in during the final approach. Dr. Somin came to the shipyard to install the kill switch device. It was surprisingly small, no larger than a briefcase. Inside was the quantum transmitter that could shut down the swarm. This device is connected to every nanite through quantum entanglement, Somin explained to Captain Bora. When you activate it, the signal propagates faster than light. Every nanite will receive the shutdown command simultaneously. What about the mutated ones? Bora asked. Somin's expression darkened. They won't respond. They've lost the entanglement. But if we shut down 99% of the swarm, the remaining 1% won't have enough mass to sustain exponential growth. They'll eventually run out of matter to consume and go dormant. Eventually? A few years. Maybe a decade. But the galaxy will survive. Bora looked at the small device that held the fate of trillions. That's all that matters now. The crew assembled for the first time 3 days before launch. 200 men and women from 20 different countries. The youngest was 19. The oldest was 67. They wore simple black uniforms with no rank insignia. Everyone was equal on this mission. Commander Hajin stood before them and gave a short speech. Most of you don't know each other. You won't have time to become friends. We launch in 72 hours. We'll reach the gray zone in 6 weeks. Then we have approximately 3 minutes to complete our objective before the ship fails. What happens if the kill switch doesn't work? Someone asked. Hajin answered honestly. Then we die and the galaxy dies with us, so we make sure it works. The next 3 days passed in a blur of final preparations. The crew ran drills until they could operate in their sleep. They studied the navigation charts, memorized emergency procedures, and wrote final messages home. Bora spent her last night on Earth in her small apartment. She had no family left, no close friends. The war had taken everyone she cared about. She sat at her desk and wrote a letter to nobody in particular. To whoever finds this, she wrote, I don't expect forgiveness for what I've done. I dropped those nanites knowing what they would do. I killed billions of Valtros, including children who never hurt anyone. I told myself it was justice. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't, but now I have a chance to stop the killing. That has to count for something. She sealed the letter in an envelope and left it on her desk. Launch day arrived cold and gray. No crowds gathered to watch. No news cameras recorded the moment. The Absolution departed from the dark side of the moon where nobody could see. The mission was still classified. Most of Earth didn't know about the containment breach or the desperate plan to fix it. The ship activated its engines and accelerated toward the gray zone. 200 souls on a collision course with oblivion. The journey took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of watching the gray zone expand on their sensors. 6 weeks of knowing they might already be too late. The swarm was spreading faster than predicted. It had already consumed 4 neighboring star systems. Medical officer Silgi spent most of her time treating anxiety and depression. Several crew members developed severe insomnia. Others had panic attacks. A few wanted to turn back. We signed up to die, one engineer told her. But I didn't think it would take this long. The waiting is worse than the death. Silgi had no comfort to offer. She felt the same way. Every day brought them closer to the end. Every day felt like borrowed time. Commander Hajin kept the crew focused with constant drills and simulations. They practiced the kill switch activation hundreds of times. Every second would count in the final approach. One mistake, one hesitation, and the mission failed. Sensor technician Giwan monitored their progress. He was the one who first saw what the gray zone had become. His hands shook as he brought the readings to Captain Bora. Captain, you need to see this. The main screen showed the former Valtros throne world of Chris. Except it wasn't a planet anymore. The entire world had been consumed and transformed. Where there had once been oceans and continents, now there was only a writhing mass of gray matter. The nanites had consumed everything. The crust, the mantle, even the core. The planet had become a ball of pure nanite swarm, extending from the center to high orbit. It pulsed with malevolent life, growing larger every day. How dense is it? Bora asked. Giwan checked his instruments. Beyond our ability to measure? The nanite concentration is... I've never seen anything like it. Captain, that's not a planet anymore. It's a living weapon. How long can our hull survive in that environment? Giwan ran the calculations. 4 minutes before complete hull breach. Maybe less. And we need at least 2 minutes to reach the core and transmit the signal. Yes, Captain. Bora looked at the pulsing gray mass on the screen. Somewhere in the heart of that nightmare, they would make their final stand. She turned to address her crew. Listen up. We always knew this was a one-way trip. Now we know exactly what we're flying into. That thing used to be a world with cities and people. Now it's death incarnate. We're going to fly straight into its heart. We're going to activate that kill switch, and we're going to save the galaxy. Even though the galaxy will never know? Someone asked. Especially because they'll never know, Bora replied. The best victories are the ones nobody has to see. The disasters that never happen. The civilizations that survive because someone stood in the dark and did what needed to be done. The crew nodded. They understood. This wasn't about glory or recognition. This was about atonement, about fixing the terrible thing they had helped create. Lieutenant Taeyang approached Bora privately after the briefing. Do you think we're doing the right thing? What do you mean? The Valtros killed 10 billion of us. We killed 400 billion of them. Now we're sacrificing ourselves to save everyone else. Where does it end? When is the debt paid? Bora thought about his question. The debt is never paid. We can't bring back the dead. We can't undo what happened. All we can do is stop the killing from spreading further. Will that be enough? It has to be. The Absolution continued its approach to Chris. The gray planet grew larger in their windows. Soon it filled their entire view, a world of death waiting to consume them. Commander Hajin ordered everyone to their stations. They strapped into their emergency positions. The ship's systems hummed with power. The kill switch device sat ready on the bridge, its small form containing the hope of the galaxy. Final approach in 10 minutes, the navigator announced. Bora gripped the arms of her command chair. She thought about everyone she had lost. Her friends on Mars, the crew of Prometheus, all the billions who died because of hate and fear and the terrible mathematics of revenge. All hands, she said over the intercom. It's been an honor serving with you. Let's go save the galaxy. The Absolution accelerated toward the gray dawn. 200 hearts beat as one. 200 souls prepared to make the only choice left to them. Behind them, the galaxy watched and waited. Trillions of lives hung in the balance, and none of them knew that their salvation was approaching at the speed of light, crewed by ghosts who had already accepted their fate. The Absolution hit the outer edge of the gray zone at precisely 600 Earth Standard Time. The change was immediate and terrible. The ship's hull began to vibrate as trillions of nanites swarmed against it, trying to find a way inside. Captain Bora watched the hull integrity readings drop. 98%, 96%. The condensed matter hull was holding, but the nanites were learning. They tested different frequencies, different chemical approaches, different angles of attack. Navigator, plot the fastest course to planetary core, Bora ordered. Course plotted. Estimated transit time, 3 minutes 40 seconds. Sensor technician Gaiwan looked up from his station. Captain, hull integrity is dropping faster than predicted. We have maybe 4 minutes total before critical failure. That gives us 20 seconds after we reach transmission range. If we're lucky. The ship pushed deeper into the swarm. Outside the hull, the gray mass pressed against them like ocean water. Except this ocean was alive and hungry. Through the reinforced windows, they could see the nanites moving in organized patterns. The swarm had developed a kind of collective intelligence. It's beautiful, someone whispered. It was beautiful in a horrifying way. The nanites flowed like liquid metal, forming complex geometric shapes that dissolved and reformed. Humanity had created something that transcended their original purpose. The swarm was no longer just a weapon. It was something new, something that had never existed before, and it had to die. The first hull breach came at 2 minutes into their penetration. Deck 7 aft section. Emergency bulkhead slammed shut immediately, sealing off the compromised area. 30 crew members were trapped on the wrong side. Bora heard their final transmissions over the intercom, screaming, then silence. The nanites had found them. Hull integrity at 70%, Giwan reported. His voice remained steady despite the terror in his eyes. More breaches opened. Deck 5, Deck 3, the engineering section. Each time the bulkheads sealed, but crew members died. The ship was coming apart around them. Lieutenant Taeyang monitored the kill switch device. Device is functioning normally. Ready to transmit on your command, Captain. Not yet. We need to get closer. The Absolution pushed toward the planet's core. What had once been Chris was now a solid mass of nanites hundreds of kilometers deep. The density increased with every meter they descended. The hull groaned under the pressure. At 3 minutes, half the ship was compromised. Only the bridge and the central core remained intact. The crew on the bridge could hear the nanites working on the other side of the walls. A sound like a million insects chewing. Range to transmission point? Bora asked. 60 seconds, the navigator replied. Bora looked at her remaining crew. 20 people left out of 200. Everyone else was dead. Commander Hajin, Medical Officer Sulgi, most of the engineering team, gone into the gray. Taeyang prepared to transmit. He opened the briefcase containing the kill switch. The device inside looked deceptively simple. Just a small black box with a single button. One press would send the quantum signal across light years, shutting down 99% of the swarm. 30 seconds to transmission range. The hull integrity dropped to 30%. Bora felt the ship shuddering around her. They weren't going to make it. The math was clear. The nanites would breach the bridge before they reached optimal transmission range. But they didn't need optimal. They just needed good enough. Taeyang, transmit now. Captain, we're not in position yet. We'll only reach 50% of the swarm. 50% that dies is better than 0. Do it, Taeyang pressed the button. The device activated with no sound, no flash of light. But across 2,000 light-years of space, the quantum signal propagated instantly. Every nanite that still contained the original quantum entanglement received the shutdown command simultaneously. And they stopped. Quintillions of nanites across dozens of star systems simply ceased function. They stopped consuming, stopped replicating. Their molecular bonds dissolved and they fell apart into inert dust. On Earth, Dr. Soman watched the readings with tears streaming down her face. The swarm was collapsing. The gray zone was shrinking. The galaxy was saved. But on the bridge of absolution, Captain Bora didn't know if it had worked. The hull finally failed. The nanites poured through the walls like water through a breaking dam. Bora felt them touch her legs, felt her flesh dissolve. There was no pain, just a strange cold sensation as her body was broken down into atoms. She looked at Taeyang and saw him dissolving too. His fingers still pressed against the button. Her last thought was a prayer. Let it be enough. Let our deaths mean something. The bridge disintegrated. The absolution came apart like paper in a fire. 200 souls dissolved into the gray. Their atoms scattered and consumed. But their sacrifice had worked. Across the galaxy, the gray tide stopped expanding. The infected worlds remained dead. But the contamination spread no further. The mutated nanites that couldn't be shut down continued consuming. But without the mass of the main swarm to support them, their growth was linear instead of exponential. Within a year, even the mutated nanites ran out of matter to consume in the dead zones. They went dormant, waiting for new material that would never come. The crisis was over. On Earth, President Minho addressed the world for the first time since the containment breach. He looked older than his years, carrying the weight of billions of deaths. The swarm has been stopped, he announced, at the cost of 200 brave souls who gave their lives to correct humanity's mistake. We mourn them, we honor them, and we must never forget what brought us to this point. The memorial service was held at the Museum of Final Dawn, a building constructed specifically to remember the crisis. Ambassador Kyungmin attended on behalf of the Galactic Confederation. Dozens of other species sent representatives. The museum's central chamber contained 200 empty chairs, each marked with a name. Captain Bora, Lieutenant Taeyang, Commander Hajin, Medical Officer Sulgi, Sensor Technician Giwan, Engineer Myung-hee, all the others who had flown the absolution into oblivion. But the museum held more than just their names. The walls were covered with 10 billion names. Every human who died in the Valtros attack. Every colonist on Horizon's Promise. Every family on Luna. Every worker on Mars. And in a separate chamber, controversial but necessary, were 400 billion more names. The Valtros dead. Every citizen of the Empire that humanity had destroyed in its rage. President Minho walked through the Valtros chamber alone after the ceremony. He read names at random. Krestek, Velmora, Sharkin. Names that meant nothing to him but had meant everything to someone. Do you regret it? Ambassador Kyungmin asked, joining him. Minho considered the question. Every day. But I would make the same choice again. They killed us first. We responded with the only weapon we had. And nearly destroyed the galaxy in the process. Yes, that's the part that keeps me awake at night. Not that we killed them. That we almost killed everyone. Kyungmin nodded. My people have a saying. The weapon you create in anger will wound more than your enemy. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. Will the galaxy forgive us? Eventually. But you must forgive yourselves first. That will take longer. Decades passed. The dead zones remained as monuments to what had happened. No species tried to reclaim the former Valtros worlds. They were left as they were, gray and lifeless, eternal warnings. The Galactic Confederation offered humanity a council seat and substantial reparations. Earth accepted both, though no amount of money or status could repay the cost. 10 billion lives could never be brought back. The remaining Valtros, those few million who had survived, were given sanctuary on a dozen different worlds. They lived quietly, forever marked by what their empire had done. Some tried to rebuild, others simply tried to forget. Commander Ariam stood at the memorial site in deep space, at the exact coordinates where Absolution had made its final transmission. She was 40 years old, a decorated officer in Earth's fleet. She had never met her mother, Captain Bora, who had died before Arium was born, but she knew the stories. Every year she came to this place. Every year she read her mother's final log entry, the one that had been transmitted seconds before the ship's destruction. "We were human," the log read. "We felt rage when our children died. We felt the need for revenge. We created something terrible in our pain, but when we saw what our weapon would do, when we understood the price of our vengeance, we chose to stop it. We chose to be better than our pain. We chose to save the galaxy even though the galaxy will never know our names. That choice defines us more than our mistakes. Remember that. Please remember that." Arium wiped tears from her eyes. Around her, other descendants of the Final Dawn crew gathered. Sons and daughters, grandchildren, all born after the crisis, all carrying the legacy. "They saved us," someone said. "They saved everyone," Arium replied. Back on Earth, in the Museum of Final Dawn, school children took their daily tour. They walked past the names on the walls. 10 billion human dead, 400 billion Valtros dead, 200 heroes who stopped the killing. A young girl stopped in front of Captain Bora's chair. "Teacher, was she a good person or a bad person?"